We have 2 more weeks before this window ends, so tonight, learn the latest developments surrounding Aubameyang, Casadei of Inter Milan, Wesley Fofana updates, as well as exits surrounding Emerson and West Ham, and Hudson-Odoi loan offers coming in now. So we have a ton of things to break down and discuss tonight, my friends. Before we get into things, 2 quick plugs. Check out today's Newsdaily video focused on Gordon and the FA's investigation to Thomas Tuchel's comments, as well as my match review on our game yesterday. So I hope you guys definitely enjoyed today's video. Show us some love. And getting straight into things. So now let's start with things. Let's discuss the latest developments surrounding Wesley Fofana. Now this story broke from Sky Sports, and credit has to go out to them. They were the first ones after that game versus Spurs to break the story that we had intentions to sign Anthony Gordon from Everton on a permanent deal. So you've got to keep things real and you have to give them credit for this story. So basically, this story came out an hour ago, and it suggests that Wesley Fofana is very unsettled and he is not a very happy man. It's believed that he thought that Leicester understood that if a powerful European club came for him, he'd be allowed to leave if an offer was respectable. And I guess his fear is that he's hoping that he is not getting priced out of a move because he has ambitions to play in the World Cup for France. He has ambitions to play Champions League football, and he sees us as the perfect club for him to grow and fulfill his potential. Now Leicester want more than 80 million to sell him. They want more money than Harry Maguire when he made that move to Man United. And there seems to be some willingness now from our new owner and Todd BOEHLY to potentially pay a world record fee. Now, originally we were hoping not to come anywhere near close to this, but maybe the situation has now evolved. Things are different now. The window ends in 2 weeks' time, and Tuchel wants his players, and BOEHLY has promised Tuchel he will get him the guys that he needs. So I'm hoping that if we are going to pay crazy amounts of money, there are going to be some amazing structures in this deal to pay for this over time. Some very nice and realistic add-ons that also give us the opportunity to pay off that full potential and valuation of Fofana over time as well too. Brendan Rodgers has been adamant that he feels Leicester City is the perfect environment for Fofana to grow and improve as a player. However, the reality is this: Leicester have made no new additions throughout this entire window, and players are not stupid and their agents aren't stupid either. Managers, of course, will lie to make sure they get the benefits and advantages that they need to make sure that they can still do their job at their current club. And a lot of times they will lie to players to persuade them to stay, give false promises, and of course never fulfill them. So Fofana won't make that same mistake. And now that he's feeling very unsettled, is this giving us maybe a glimpse into the immediate future that he may potentially put in a transfer request to get this deal over the line? Things are looking very interesting. There's some willingness on our part now to get this deal over the line, and there's 2 weeks left. So let's continue to watch the space. How do you guys feel about Fofana? Are you excited by him? And how do you feel about the potential amount of money it will cost for him to sign for us to begin with? Today's video is brought to you by friends of the channel in OneFootball. OneFootball is the app I constantly use all the time, especially when I want to get all the match stats and details after a game. As you guys can see here, we saw that Koulibaly was voted the best player, and you can vote for your personal best player as well post-match. And I just like getting the stats and breakdowns of how our games went versus our opponents. For example, we can look here, we're looking at some of the shots we had against them. Shots on target, which was criminally low in yesterday's game. For me personally, certain guys are good enough to be hitting that target. I'm looking at Kai and I'm looking at Raheem Sterling. But of course, going to things like tackles won, we were very superior in terms of winning the ball against Spurs. And of course, in terms of yellow cards, surprisingly, all 3 went to us. And Spurs didn't pick up a single booking in that game yesterday, which kind of sums up the entirety of how that game went down. But maybe I shouldn't be looking at the match stats when I'm promoting the OneFootball app. But honestly, guys, this is why I like the app, due to the convenience of being able to find this information as soon as possible. So now the Premier League season is starting. This is the perfect time to try the app out for yourselves. Give it a go, and you'll find a link below in the description. So right now, let's move on to the next story, and let's discuss the future of Callum Hudson-Odoi. Now, originally tonight, he was supposed to feature in the PL2 game versus Fulham, where guys like Ben Chilwell, Chukwuemeka, plus many other players like Jalapatu as well, were playing, of course, to continue to boost their fitness and get those minutes up. However, he dropped out the team, and that's because loan offers are coming in thick and fast. Now, we're not getting an idea of who these clubs are exactly. However, you can imagine that based on the multiple reports that have come out over the past few days and weeks, clubs like Dortmund, Newcastle, Southampton, for example, too, and Leicester City are all showing that interest to try and sign him. And, you know, for me, it's the right time for Hudson-Odoi now to move on and get consistent minutes throughout the entirety of the season. But I'll give my thoughts and opinions as the story goes on. Realistically, though, it seems like Dortmund currently and Newcastle are the main favourites at this point in time. Now, we can't forget that last summer, Tuchel denied Hudson-Odoi the opportunity to join Dortmund on loan because he wanted to keep him, of course, to strengthen the squad. I'd imagine that was why we saw Hudson-Odoi playing as a left winger during most parts of the season, because he was not enjoying playing as a wing back, because that really isn't his game. It is funny though then that this season we are seeing Hudson-Odoi used again as a wing back, and after not featuring in that squad versus Everton, I think him and his camp decided that this was the perfect time now to move on and get minutes, because he is ambitious. He's shown that he's hungry now to get back to playing his best football and to not have that consistency behind his game, to not get those regular minutes where, you know, sometimes you won't have the best game, but you need that confidence and faith from your manager that he will still get those minutes to continue development. For me, he can't get them here, and it is best for him to now move on and to become the best player he possibly can be. Now let's focus on this Borussia Dortmund loan offer. It seems like there is an option to buy in the deal. Now for us, we don't want there to be any option to buy deals inserted in the loan move. However, if we were forced to have to accept one, it would have to be considerably very high. And this is where things are interesting, because currently Hudson-Odoi has 2 years left in his deal. So if he was to go out on loan, he'd come back next season with 1 year left. You'd imagine the club ideally would want him to commit to signing a new contract first. However, when you have 2 years left in your deal, normally this is the prime time for clubs to make moves for players, knowing the fact that, you know, the valuation is a lot more affordable when you have 2 years left on your existing deal. So I'd imagine those things will be a little bit complicated, but the player in this camp are adamant that he wants to go, and offers are coming in thick and fast. Ideally, the club wouldn't mind him going on loan to the Premier League club, and they want to avoid any kind of like Billy Gilmore-esque situations when he joined Norwich as well too. But in my opinion, you know, in the fact that Dortmund presented a, you know, career path for him that really enticed the player in this camp last summer, and the fact that they're playing in a top league and playing Champions League football, if we ideally still see a future for Hudson-Odoi, for me it makes more sense for him to go to Dortmund to play for the better club and to become a leading player for them. I think that is the most common sense thing, and if that was denied to him, I'd be a bit disappointed. For me, the reality is simply this. In the current system, there is no real role for Hudson-Odoi in this team. He is not like a traditional, like direct type of winger. He's always been more of like a playmaker-esque winger. He, for me, is like a Ribéry style winger, and that's why I think Bayern Munich was so, you know, enticed to try and make moves for him. And they made 3 offers back in the day to try and sign him on permanent. So, you know, unfortunately in the system, we don't really have a use for him like that. And knowing the fact that Sterling's been signed, and realistically Aubameyang's coming, and probably next summer we'll sign more attacking players too, what message are you sending out there? So if Hudson-Odoi can have an incredible loan spell, he comes back with new opportunities, we can then see what happens. But I don't know. The fact that we're looking at guys like Anthony Gordon too, it's not giving you a very confident picture of how the future could potentially look. And I'm even thinking in the case of Gordon, would he even feel confident that he'd get the right development behind him to be able to really maximize his potential and become the player that he has to be? I think this is where these things get quite interesting now. So let's see what happens with this situation. Expect more developments to come soon. But you'd imagine now that Hudson in his camp will be in full control over his future. Last summer, of course, when he was denied that loan spell, it didn't work out in his favour. The injury came. That wasn't ideal, and to be playing right wing back again, it's kind of going backwards. So now we move on to the next story, and we have some updates surrounding Aubameyang and Barcelona. And finally, as reported by Romano and Matt Law, an official offer is incoming, and we should expect to see one by the end of this week, probably around Friday as well too. Now, the price that Barcelona want to sell Aubameyang is around £21 million, which is not too bad. And of course, talks will continue throughout the entirety of this week. And we know that even last week, talks first began. So it seems like things are starting to move in a very nice trajectory at this point in time. But regardless though, we know that Tuchel sees Oba as his main man. He had a great relationship with him back at Dortmund. Now we saw Tuchel protecting the player, as we saw journalists ask him as to whether he may be a bit nervous to work alongside a player that was seen as a disruptive influence at Arsenal, with Tuchel simply saying that's between him and Arteta. For me, I got nothing bad to say about the guy whatsoever, and for very good reason, because Werner's left us, Hudson-Odoi could be going, and there's more news surrounding Ziyech and Man United too, so we need attacking replacements to help us for this season. Regardless though, Aubameyang is currently content with life at Barcelona. Xavi really likes him and sees him as great competition alongside Lewandowski as well too, as we know that Aubameyang had a very impressive start to his Barcelona spell. However, Barcelona still have to free up that wage bill to be able to register players and sign more as well too. So it seems like Aubameyang of course could be sacrificed as well. And as reported by Matt Law and Romano, Aubameyang is willing to listen to an offer if we find a fee with Barcelona first, which shouldn't stop us, to be honest, knowing that £21 million is not too much money. However, he still has to be convinced to leave Barca, but it's nowhere near as bad as it is with Frenkie de Jong. He's not really pushing for things, but I get the vibe that he is open to understanding that, okay, he could be going. And of course, go back to London to work with a manager that got the best out of you before makes things extremely exciting. Currently, it seems like we could be signing 2 players from Barcelona. Of course, in the case of Frenkie de Jong, he is adamant still that he won't take any pay reductions and ideally still wants to stay. However, some reports in Spain now suggesting that Barcelona feel like the player now is using them as a tactical ploy, of course, to get the best possible conditions with us or even Manchester United. So as I've been saying, I'd expect this deal to be potentially wrapped up during the final moments of the window. And going back to Aubameyang, you'd imagine that once we're able to agree terms to sign him, and once we get that fee with Barcelona, then we'd allow Marcos Alonso to move in the opposite direction. So again, let's continue to see how these stories develop. We now move on to the next story, and it seems like we are close again to signing another young player, and of course that is Cesare from Inter Milan. Now, we know that we are getting close now to finding a figure for the new Italian Michael Ballack, and we are now ahead of Nice, who are our competition over the signature for the player. It seems like our third bid is coming very soon, and this third bid will be around £12 million, which is €50 million that Inter Milan originally wanted to sell the player. So I guess now we wait for things to happen, and let's see if maybe any other clubs may come in with any 11th hour offers to try and disrupt this move and steal him from us. Now, Cesare will potentially join alongside players like Chukwuemeka, Slonina, plus a host of signings made for the academy, but reports are still quite unsure as to what the plan is for the player. Will he remain with our development team and then maybe potentially then move out in January? Who knows? I'd be very surprised if we stay with the first team knowing that Chukwuemeka is staying with us, and by the time he gets his first team minutes, I don't think that's going to come for at least maybe a month or two. Some reports have suggested that he may be signed and then immediately loaned back to a Serie A club. We know that Sassuolo were a club very interested in trying to sign him, and they have an incredible rep of using young players in Serie A. So let's see what happens with those developments. Still, I guess there could be a conversation around the fact that we are targeting many, international youth stars as well as homegrown youth stars as well too. And when does that leave the likes of your Vales, your Charlie Websters, etc, etc? We'll have to see, but before we end things, I guess we're not quite finished with Inter Milan. Now, if you guys have watched my Ben Jacobs feature where he gave some incredible insight about the interesting players we're looking for, Dumfries is a guy that is still in the horizon, even though he is not the highest priority. But if, let's say, moves fail for other targets, we may be forced to pay the money that Inter Milan want, and they're hoping that figures between 40 mil to 50 million could be enough. So let's see what happens as time goes on. And now to end things, let's end things with exit news, and let's talk about West Ham and Emerson, as West Ham have presented an offer of £30 million. Now, Todd Boehly wants to start receiving transfer income now by selling players. Not everyone can leave out on loan. It makes no sense for us, and now that Cucurella has been signed, Emerson is far down in the pecking order, and all those reports back in January of Tuchel being a massive fan and wanting him to come, it kind of just feels like manager talk, of course, to get the player on your side and turn to him to help save your bacon because you had an injury crisis. But regardless, I think it's good for Emerson. Probably makes sense for him to make that short move across London to go to West Ham. They have a defensive crisis. For me, I'd like to play with them a bit more to try and get more money, but the reality is, to get 13 million for Emerson, where we've struggled to let go of him for multiple seasons now, maybe we have to take this offer and not take any more else. Now, what's interesting about this report though is that there seems to be a willingness on West Ham's part to sign Emerson on a permanent deal actually. One of the reasons as to why is that they are still keeping their eyes on Breuer and Conor Gallagher, because the reality is, let's say Dion came, would Gallagher feel like maybe he has to leave now to secure his World Cup spot? If that's the case, then West Ham will be waiting for the player, and it's the same thing for Breuer. If Aubameyang signed, will Breuer feel like he won't get as much consistent game time? If so, West Ham are waiting as well too, and they want to be in our favour to make sure that they get first priority if anything happened as the window is coming to an end. So things will continue to turn into this before we get to the final days. It's going to be a very epic end to what's been a ridiculous window where we could have spent over 400 million in one window, which is not making any sense, to be fair. So you guys, now I'm going to wrap things up, keep things moving. Thank you for watching. I'm EFC, this is BlueLionsTV. I'll catch you guys later with some more videos. Cool.